Thanks to a recent court order, Republicans are gearing up to interfere with the November election, but not in the way that you're probably thinking. All of those ways too, but they have a new one as well. This Republican program, which has gained steam in recent weeks, envisions recruiting up to 50,000 volunteers in 15 key states to monitor polling places and challenge ballots and voters deemed suspicious. It's part of a $20 million plan that also allots millions to challenge lawsuits by Democrats and voting rights advocates seeking to loosen state restrictions on balloting. And it's part of an overall effort to cast Democrats as agents of election theft, something that's been going on for a long time. So before we jump into it, Francesca, I want to let you know sort of why we're at this point where suddenly they can flood these states with people concerned about voter fraud. So the efforts are bolstered by a 2018 federal court ruling that for the first time in nearly 4 decades allows the National Republican Party to mount campaigns against purported voter fraud without court approval. The court ban on Republican Party voter fraud operations was imposed back in 1982 and modified in 1986 and also 1990, each time after courts found instances of Republicans intimidating or working to exclude minority voters in the name of preventing fraud. The party was found to have violated it yet again in 2004, and I want to give you an example. At one point, I believe this is in 2018, the party recruited off-duty police officers wearing, quote, National Ballot Security Task Force armbands, it's not a thing, to monitor polling places in Black and Latino neighborhoods in New Jersey, just to watch out for voter fraud. Not to scare people off, just voter fraud. And so that was like one of the tests. Now it's going to be 50,000 plus in all of the battleground states.
They can't win without cheating. Like Republicans cannot win without cheating, whether it's the Electoral College, which is kind of a form of cheating, holdover from slavery, or just straight up voter suppression. Voter fraud doesn't exist. We understand that it's like there's like 5 instances and they're all Steve Bannon. Like every single year. It's like, how many states is that dude registered in? Obviously, this is predictable and this is sad and this is what is going to happen. It has always happened. Like we saw, Karl Rove in 2008 or 12, whenever he was live on television when Barack Obama was announced the winner, and he was like, what? Oh my God, who am I going to text? Like, you didn't do it right. Like these fools have been trying to cheat and suppress the vote for so many election cycles. And yeah, what do? We have to actually combat it with real election security. There needs to be money for mail-in voting. And also, I do think there needs to be a counter effort from Democrats to actually, if there are going to be 50,000 people, there should be 100,000 Democrats. I'm serious. That's the only way, is to actually help people cast their ballot and exercise their right.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about at the ballots. Obviously, in terms of actual activist efforts to send out people to get people registered and stuff like that, I'm going to conservatively guess that 90% of that is Democrats, because the goal is to increase the number of votes, which is the most uniform position against that Republicans have had over our lifetime. So they're gonna try to scare people off. We already know how many elections have we been through? We know how this is going to happen. In the month leading up to the election, you're going to find out that in multiple states, I'm assuming that since Georgia is apparently trending slightly more blue, you are going to find a Thanos-like evaporation of polling places in certain neighborhoods. You fill in the blank what type of neighborhoods, but that's going to happen. Texas, too. You're going to find that voting in Houston is going to be a little bit more difficult than Bandera this time around, because that's looking like it's going to be tight as well. Wisconsin, a lot of concern about voter fraud in Wisconsin, even though, as you said, we know that the entire thing is made up. Voter fraud is one of the rarest things in the universe. It really is. And when you find it, most of the time, it's going to be Republicans. But honestly, I'll even allow that because it's so insignificant and not nearly enough to actually sway an election. But voter suppression very much is, especially in a state like Wisconsin, which was, in the, 12,000 votes or 11,000 votes or something like that. And really fast, in the Wisconsin case, there's an individual who's involved in this effort and is saying, we're not just looking for voter fraud in the areas where Republicans lost. we're worried about the ones where they won as well. I mean, if there's a place where Trump got 7 or 11,000 votes or something like that, maybe he actually got 14,000. So he's saying in his example that he thinks like 20% of the votes are fraudulent or stolen or something. Like, these are the people that say that COVID-19 isn't fatal enough, okay? But they think that 1 in 5, 1 in 6 votes are fraudulently cast, despite the fact that there has never been any evidence of that whatsoever.
No, this is the playbook. You're absolutely right. You have to suppress the vote if you're a Republican and you still want to win. And yeah, of course you have to go after Black and brown communities. Again, I just really wish we had an opposition party that acted like one. I really wish we had a federal elections commission that weren't so partisan, right? We know that there is gridlock, and that's about finance, but like it is absolutely related that all these regulatory bodies are gridlocked between Republicans and Democrats, and they never get anything done. Mm-hmm. So even though we have all this data to prove that there has been suppression and that there has been corruption, we can't actually change anything. And each state is now, you know, we've talked about it on TYT a lot, is using more and more automatic, voter systems that are not sound, that can be hacked. And it is almost like our response to coronavirus, right? It's sort of Lord of the Flies. Every governor decides how they want to vote, if they, want to go with paper ballots or not. And so how we can't have any more faith in our democracy than we have in our response to COVID-19.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, the fact that like for this long, the fraud of voter fraud has, I feel like there's no response. Like Republicans are just pushing all day long. Like Tucker Carlson will just do a full hour about the fact that there's tons of voter fraud, and there's really no concern on the other side. There's just this acceptance. Like, one of the things that I am most critical of, I understand it's not one of the biggest high-profile, sexiest things that Obama could have done, but that when he had power, when he had control over the Senate, that they didn't do more to make sure that people would be able to vote, I find incomprehensible. And I will say that we talk often about how high the stakes are for the Supreme Court going forward. I mean, it's already been given to them, but even worse, this is one of the areas that effectively, if you let Trump put into the states 150 more district judges and supermajority in the Supreme Court, imagine what they will do in regard to voting rights, the suppression that they'll allow, the clearly racially motivated suppression, and then let that stay for the next 40 years. Have judges who are going to be upholding the most insane gerrymandering and voter suppression through the rest of our lives, and see how successful you are in elections from here on out. It's already insane. It's getting worse every month. Imagine what they could lock in with a few more years.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.